the one and only Tom Luongo.
Hi, Henry.
No
how are
pressure
you?
on that. I'm good. How are
Yeah,
you doing today?
everybody says that now, and I'm like, really? I mean, I mean, okay, maybe I am kind of unique, but like, in what way that I'm like unique? Well, I guess in this the one and only Dave Collum, because that guy is,
That's true.
that guy's unique too. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's the chemist thing. I'm not sure. Hi,
Yeah.
Henry. How are you? How you been?
I'm doing great. Thank you. So let's see. I wanted to start with this. During the election, you
Right.
famously put your support behind Kamala Harris. I'm wondering how you're feeling here after the loss.
Oh God, man! My liver can't take it. They really can't.
Yeah.
I've been drinking heavily, and
That's right.
I cope every day with
Yeah.
more. I shave my head.
Yep. I see that.
I'm there. So no sex
get through it.
with men. That for me.
No,
I'm there.
exactly. Yeah, you got to take the next 4 years off. Yep.
Yeah, I'm at least come on. So yeah, there's that. Actually, I'm ecstatic that things worked out the way they did from that perspective. I think Trump's victory was. I'll be honest with you. I think it's one for the ages, and in other ways, I'm almost my wife and I have been chatting about this all week as we go through and literally kind of giggle at each other at every turn of events as this is going on. It's just been way too much fun. More fun, I think, even in 2016. In 2016, I just walked around for a week afterwards cackling.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but that's what I did. I literally would walk around the house and I would just like spontaneously cackling in the most dismissive and hilarious and obnoxious way imaginable. And to this time around, I'm like, oh no, this shit's just hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great and it's edifying because when you really dig into how this thing happened, right, how it came together, it was literally in like 2 generations. I'm being right about this for this month's newsletter. You dig into the numbers, it's really clear. Trump won Gen X, and he nearly won the 18 to 29 year olds who shifted like 25 points away from, or 18 points away from Biden. It went from like 36% for Trump in 2020 to 47%, 48%. He only lost the kids by like 3 points.
That's crazy.
And then when you look at when you break the numbers down further, I'm going through by the AP numbers that I saw. Then you break it down further by the male female dichotomy. Men became even more convinced, especially Gen X men. They went like 60-40 Trump. They're like, yeah, that with her, that's enough. Yeah. But then even so, it was something I said before the election. I said, they're counting on the women vote. And I'm telling you, Kamala Harris is everything that women really in their heart of hearts hate. She's a social climber who climbed by getting on her knees. And, she's not a merit-based person. She's exactly the kind of women that other women gossip about behind their backs. Female violence is all about reputation. So at some point, like real women who have young boys, and that's a lot of women in this country, like you're disrespecting and you're taking away the future of all their boys. And white women were like, that's enough. Black women were even like, well, maybe that he's got a point. It wasn't great. And the black female numbers weren't great, but they were still like +5 or +7 over what they were in 2020. I mean, so Trump got like 15 or 13% of black women. That was a blowout. He got 25% of black men. So I mean, it's huge.
You've been touching on all of it, but I want to have that discussion like a little bit more of a structured way. And the way I wanted to ask it was, what do you think happened in this election as compared to the previous one? And that's a simple question, but there's multiple ways you could go. You've talked about how specific people have switched from one side to the other. There's the other aspect where there's those 15 to 20 million votes that were there last time that haven't existed in other elections. And we could cover both. There now. But just tell me, both sides or more angles, what's actually happening there?
Well, a couple of things. I think people were just as fired up in this election as in 2020. But I think Biden voters were probably, or at least, non-Trump voters were more fired up in 2020 than we want to admit. They also cheated in ways
Yep.
that were just off the charts. And let's not kid ourselves. It's all nonsense to think that they didn't. I'm sorry, YouTube, get over yourself. They cheated. And I love the fact that the Democrats, that the crazy Democrats, not all of them, but the crazy Democrats are looking at the situation going, where did our 15 million votes go? Trump must have cheated. Okay,
Right.
that's really cute and all, and I'm going to keep thinking that way, please, because it's going to drive you insane, and then eventually you're going to commit suicide and take yourselves out of the gene pool. It'll be good. Okay, now, like, no, I'm at that point. I don't care. These people we need to make them cry. It's okay. We need to almost feel bad about it while we go through the process, because this is what they've done to us. Turnabout is not only is turnabout fair play, it's necessary to break a lot of them of their programming, and that's important. But between that and Lara Trump being ready at all of the battleground states, when I hear she had 200 lawyers per state or 500 lawyers per state, plus thousands of poll watchers and everything else, and they kept trying to do the industrial strength cheating, and they got cockblocked at every turn, and they got and I mean, you know what I mean, and so it just didn't happen. And there came a point where enough people just finally rose up and said, "That's enough, and we're going to stop this." And we got an inkling of what the country really looks like. And I've been saying, multiple venues now, that if you look at the vote in Florida and even Texas, what you really see what you saw was a real 5 to 6 point shift away from the baseline that we would have normally gotten. We were all handicapping Florida +7, +8, and it comes in +14.
Wow.
Texas +5, +6, it comes in +14, +13, right? What you're seeing there is that's how fed up people were, and you got those people, and you got a different, in this case, you got a different 75 million people showed up to vote for Trump than voted in 2020. What you didn't have this time was the industrial strength cheating and any enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. So Harris was a better candidate than Biden, because if the internal polling numbers were correct, Trump was going to win with over 400 electoral votes if Biden had been the candidate, because nobody was okay with another 4 years of a mushroom sporifying in the White House. Sorry, this is elder abuse. Please, Joe, it's time for you to go. And it would have been a pity vote. Put the man out of his misery. You're not up to the task for the next 4 years. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
There would have been as much of that as there would have been any kind of, Gen X kind of, meanness. But it would have been both. We would have been both mean and empathetic all at the same time, because we're really good at that. And funny. And and I'm with my friend Dave Collum on this, that during the darkest days of the Biden administration, the meme lords kept us going. Kept the troops kind of enthusiastic and not demoralized. And then when Trump lives, that was it. It was over. The election was over at that point, and all they could really do was salvage what was left of it. And everybody knew at this point that this was enough. They tried to kill a man. They did everything imaginable to turn him into a convicted felon, an insurrectionist, and a this, and a Russia agent. And literally after a while, then it was just, okay, so vote for me. He's literally Hitler.
Yeah.
Didn't work. Didn't work.
So then, I think everything you said is pretty factually on point. It would be hard to dispute all of that. So if they did basically place Biden in going back as the nominee that no one even wanted him, then placed him in the presidency, if what you're saying is true, right, about the previous election, and then they placed Kamala in there. I mean, they've gotten used to controlling things without democracy getting in the way, right? So
look at Europe.
If all that was done, these people are not giving up now that that's turning. So what do you think they're trying to accomplish now, I guess, is the question.
Well, see, there's another angle on this that I didn't touch on. I should probably touch on this as well. Don't kid yourself. The Lara Trump thing is nice. The lack of enthusiasm for Harris is also nice. But the trifecta here is that sovereigntists with power put their foot down. I think it's very clear. When you see a guy like Jamie Dimon come out and endorse Trump a few weeks before the election, letting everybody know on Wall Street, this needs to end. This is ending.
Yeah.
When you see oligarchs like Jeff Bezos and others block, the CIA house organ known as the Washington Post from endorsing Kamala Harris, you know that something's changing. Manila envelopes, I like to use the Manila envelope thing, like Manila envelopes with pictures of dead hookers or live boys hitting tables all over Washington and all over Quantico and all over Langley and all over, everywhere. These have come across people's desks. What I think this election has finally, what people have to make their peace with, is that we live in a mobocracy. And I mean that not as a, ruled by the mob, the pitchforks and blowtorches, but mob is in silk suits and envelope day, like my people, the Italians. This is a mafia that we have running our government, and so it depends on the quality of the person running for Don, all puns intended. And we now have Don Trump-Leone, and Don Trump-Leone is done with all of this nonsense. He was done with it, even at a personal level. He was done with it, but he was done with it when he ran in 2016. And what he didn't have were enough other mob bosses, highly placed, to back him up on this. This time around, he has mob bosses highly placed that are pushing him in a particular direction. And some of those mob bosses happen to be Jews because Trump is pro-Israel. And October 7th, I'm not going to get into what, I have a very controversial opinion on what's going on in Israel, Gaza, Lebanon, all of that. I'm not going to get into that. All right. You can hate me for it or you can love me for it. And and I'm speaking to the people who they are who are in the audience. The truth of the matter is that Donald Trump and the people that he represents were never going to be anti-Israel. I expected his pro-Israel position to be used during the campaign against him. But the fact that the Democrats were so tepidly pro-Palestinian and pro or anti quote unquote genocide, and I am using that word with scare quotes because I just don't buy that argument. What's happening in Gaza is terrible, but it's not a genocide, and I stick by that. And you can disagree with me if you want. I don't care. It's my opinion. But that whole tepid, look at their tepid support for that and realize that they were only just being pro-Palestinian in order to be an antipode to Trump and to win the election. Then they were going to back Israel just as hard later on because this is not much money. But the truth going to them, the truth of the matter is that the Jewish money had broke more for Trump this time, and that stopped a lot, and that changed some of the dynamics, such that there are certain members of the mob, the mafiosi running this country, were told, nope, it's time to side with Trump. Here's the envelope. Shut up. And I think that's an angle on this that we have to be cognizant of. Now, that means that mob understands that things are so bad that we have to literally take a complete and utter, machete to this regulatory miasma that we have on Capitol Hill that was, as far as I'm concerned, was built by people who were fundamentally traitors to this country. I don't mind being ruled by mob bosses if those mob bosses are indifferent to my existence. I don't mind being ruled by mob. I mean, I'm not crazy about it, but I'll take that over mob bosses who want to kill me.
Yeah.
And the mob bosses of Europe and Britain, sorry, folks, want to kill me. That's it. It's not tough. They proved it during COVID. They proved it after COVID. They've proved it at every turn. They're trying to send our sons and daughters over to Ukraine to fight and die to secure Russian oil and Ukrainian lithium and gas to Europe, not for us.
Yeah.
We have all that stuff. We don't need any of it. The United States doesn't need any of those resources. So when Lindsey Graham goes out there and says we're in Ukraine because of the trillions of dollars of resources, we're trying to deny them, I believe him. I also think he's an idiot and he's a traitor. And
Yeah.
that's what we have to, and I think that's what we're dealing with, is just the realization that a critical mass of people have finally said, no, these people aren't incompetent, they're traitors.
Yeah.
And they need to be gotten rid of. And it's time to, hunker down. We don't want the empire. And I'll be honest with you, if you look at the two generational cohorts I talked about earlier, Gen X and the kids, the ones whose kids are going to go to war, and the kids who would have to fight the war.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be the millennials. They're too old now. I mean, some of them would go. But realistically speaking, we're not going to be drafting 40-year-olds into the army to go fight and die in a banker war in a swampland in eastern Ukraine. Like it's just insane. It's not going to happen. Oh, just so they can die to Russian 155 millimeter shells? Really? Like, and that whole thing is just is insane. And everybody on Capitol Hill knows, because they've been informed, and they've been informed for over 20 years, that Iran is not invadable either. I was speaking with Larry Johnson last night, and he and I were talking about this, and Larry's like, look, they presented all these war games to the Pentagon presented all these war games to the intelligence agency, to the president 20 years ago. There's no functional way to invade Iran and win. Have you looked at Iran? Pretty hostile terrain. Mm-hmm. So, the idea that, for the third or fourth time, France and Britain were going to, use the easy access to Moscow to, wipe out the Russians, isn't going to work. And we're not paying for it. And we don't want it. And that's a big, big subplot in all of this. Mm-hmm. And I'm famous for, pissing on millennials and boomers because I'm Gen X and I don't like the boomers. And the millennials are just beginning to wake up to how badly they've been screwed. I actually have empathy for them. But I mean, I'm being reductionist here when I say these things. So please, let's I mostly take people as they come. And why hate people in groups when individuals give you so many reasons to hate them on a daily basis, right? When they open their mouths. But my point is that as cohorts and as imprints, they have a different view of foreign policy, a different view of domestic policy and the role of the state and everything else. And we're the kids that they left in front of the television set, we're just waiting until it's our turn, folks. Then we're going to tear all this shit down. And they've known this since we were 12. I mean, they've literally known this since they were 12. My parents weren't boomers. My parents were a silent generation. They were both, and both Dexter White and I are weird in that respect, in that we're men in our mid-50s who were raised by people who were born in the late 20s and early 30s, right? Yeah. Not in the 40s and 50s. We were both late. I was the youngest of four of, a family that my sisters are boomers. But I'm 1968. My sisters and I don't see eye to eye on anything. Because we're different generations, literally, within the same household. They're closer to my aunts than they are my sisters, right? Well, if I actually talk to them, which I don't. Because they're boomer. I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry. But my point being is that it's a very interesting shift in the way we see the world is a little different because of growing up with people of that generation being your parents. Yeah. And my grandparents were fresh off of the boat when they came over here in between 06 and 1911. I'm only second generation Italian. Okay. Yeah. My family's been here for 120 years. Right. Yep. So it's a these are long generations that we're dealing with in my particular family. My dad would be 96 today. Okay. That kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, he died 30 years ago. But, so my point being is that, when you realize that those kinds of people are going to be the ones that they grew up in the 70s when everything sucked. Their kids today are growing up in the 2020s where everything sucks. You can see the parallels. You can see the stagflation. You can see the terrible job market. You can see the lack of opportunity and all of that stuff. And the parallels are innumerable.
Yeah.
And you're like, and you expected to beat these people at the ballot box? Really? Like, these are literally the people that are going, okay, you get one last chance to let us vote this crap out of office, or we're done.
Yeah.
We're not going here. We're not going to just stand around and like, meme at you while you run that, while you lead us to the gas chambers. Like, it's not happening.
Yep.
Like, and so I think that's part of the reason why, that this kind of content has resonated so well with people. And I'm just being who I am. I'm not I'm not trying to put on a game here. This is what I do, right? This is who I am. But I think it resonates really well because there's a lot more of us than they counted on. They had counted that they could overwhelm us with numbers. They could overwhelm us with the millennials growing older because they're a much larger cohort. There's, like the baby boomers, a huge demographic bulge there.
Yeah.
Along with mass immigration, and they just thought they had run the table on us. Turns out that, you got us all to come out en masse and say no, or worse, threaten our boys with chemical castration and everything else. And like, it's not, at that point, Mama Bear shows up and says, that's enough.
Yeah.
And we saw, even the suburban housewife numbers were much closer to Trump than in 2024 than they were in 2020. And so, it's a big shift, and it's the kind of shift that gives hope to the rest of the world, because the rest of the world was really looking to us to finally make that statement. They say, look, if you guys don't get your house in order, you get your shit together, then the whole world is going to fall apart, and it's going to fall to these people, and they're going to continue to traffic our children and ship drugs around the world and give us free porn and comfortably numb us to death. I'm like, no, we don't want to live like that. So
it was interesting because it was so obviously happening before the election how it had flipped. Right. Like I live in Southern California, and it was 5-1 Trump signs.
Was it?
I mean, I'm not kidding. Yeah, it was like overwhelming, and they do like a July 4th bike parade in our town. So there's 1,000 people on just bicycles going through the town, and I only saw Trump stuff back in the summer. There wasn't a single. Well, I guess it would have been Biden at that point. That's the hilarious part. That was part of the problem. They couldn't print the signs fast enough for the candidate they installed.
Right.
But it was so overwhelmingly going that way. The conversations you had 8 years ago, it was like, you can't come into a room and say you like Trump, but you can come in and say you like Kamala. And then that all started to turn too, So it was so obviously happening that it seemed like the election verified what you could see with your own eyes finally. Right.
I think that's it's a really important point, because I've noticed it here. Remember, I live north of Gainesville, Florida, which is a classic college town. Alachua County went even more blue than they normally do. Like, I don't know, the 62-38 or something like that. I was talking to a friend of mine who does substitute teaching. He's mostly been working with 8th graders this year in the Alachua County school system. He's like, all last week, he's like, dude, all the kids are wearing MAGA hats now. Like, the election just lifted the pressure off of everybody. All of a sudden, you don't have to be coerced into conformity by having everybody look down their nose at you. And they were using that. They were using, and I want you to understand that's a very small thing, but it plays out at every level. It's fractal in that respect. At every level of human society, I think we're seeing that. It's like I've talked about in the past with Putin moving into Syria, and then all of a sudden, all the Arab states are going, "What? Someone's willing to stand up to the Americans?" Oh, the game has changed. Yeah. Like, all of a sudden, the way I like to put it is, like, it gives voice to the voiceless and spine to and I don't mean the spineless, but it gives people spine when it costs too much to have one. And I don't want to use it's a nice bit of rhetoric, voice of the voiceless and spine to the spineless, but I don't mean it in a and I don't mean it as a pejorative. I mean it as empathy. I understand why people don't speak up. I understand why they don't say anything. I get it. Like, you've got everybody's got the 2 kids in the, suburbia with the mortgage and the 2 cars and everything else. And you got to pay for this stuff. And you got to live your life, and you got to go to your business every day. And these people are evil, and they'll take it away from you. And no one wants to be the one who sticks their head up and have it get chopped off. It's the tall poppy syndrome. But once everybody is standing up, all of a sudden they can't swing the side fast enough. And then when they swing the side, there's a guy like Alex Jones and trying to steal his company from him. We finally have a judge that walks in and goes, no, that's not what I approved. Like the InfoWars sale. I don't know if you saw what happened yesterday.
Yeah, I was watching that yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. So yesterday, Alex was like, they're going to steal InfoWars from me. And they changed the rules on the auction, at the last minute to allow to basically hand the company to whomever they wanted. And they, famously handed it to the Onion, which is now owned by a bunch of shitlibs from Connecticut. Right. And then the judge went in this morning and said, oh, by the way, no, that's not what I approved.
I did not see that part.
Yeah, and he reversed the decision. And now, InfoWars is going to get resold or, and from what I understand from multiple sources of, people from multiple sources, again, multiple sources, it doesn't mean I'm any closer to the truth here as anybody else is. I'm just saying I've heard it from multiple different vectors that Roger Stone was the guy who was going to buy InfoWars and just hand it back to Alex. That was, and that there were Department of Justice folks or FBI folks. It was the DOJ was in there. Like what was the government going in there? What was the DOJ going in there to do? This was it's supposed to be a private auction, a private sale. Now, it's clearly this is just Gestapo tactics, and America's like, no, sorry, you don't get to do this. Crazy. And so now we get to watch Trump, put in like the best version of the cabinet that Gen X could have ever asked for, and they're gonna literally destroy all of these systems. Henry, I'm not kidding here when I tell you that $2 trillion out of the budget is a good start.
Yeah.
Okay, a good start. And I don't mean that so I'm not saying that as my wishful thinking. No, that's just listening to Vivek and Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing what I know about how much money has been going out in grants and NGOs and all of this other stuff. It's a massive amount of money. It's an incredible it's like the biggest gaslight of all time that we can't cut the federal budget.
Okay. Well, so let me ask you about that then, because, as Luke Groman says, right, he's like defense entitlements and interest payments are at or above maybe tax receipts already. Is that right?
Maybe it is.
So like the 3 biggest categories of the budget are pretty structural would be his take.
What I'm saying is, what Vivek is saying, what Elon's saying is that 90% of the money that's being spent is wasted. Get rid of the waste.
I'm sure it is.
Like the defense budget alone can be slashed by a third. HHS, and most of this can be done without going to Congress. What people don't understand is Vivek is completely right about this. He's like, we have a mandate to enforce the Constitution because the Supreme Court told us to do so. Yeah. That hasn't been done. I mean, I like Luke, but he's like going with numbers that are artificially inflated. There are many, many ways of dealing with this. Do you understand that there's $1.3 trillion worth of grants and loans and this and that and everything else that can immediately be stopped tomorrow, but with one word? Oh, I know I shouldn't really talk about this. I shouldn't give the game away yet. I won't talk about it yet. No, but I know how they're going to do it.
Okay.
And they're going to do it on January 21st. And everybody's going to be like, and it's going to be hilarious. Just wait for it. It's coming. I'm dead serious when I say this.
That would be incredible. Through listening to the Luke Gromans of the world, I thought just we're so stuck in some of the expenses that we can cut a ton of stuff, but it's still like...
It's first order analysis. I mean, he's not wrong. He's thinking that, gridlock in Congress and this, that, and everything else. He's not wrong in that framework. What he's not doing is doing the hard work that guys like Vivek and others have already done to go, what is under our look at this cabinet. Dexter White and I just literally recorded a podcast this morning. I haven't put it out yet. I'm going to put it out probably tomorrow. where we go over this. Look at the way the cabinet is being designed. The cabinet is being designed on a foreign policy front. It's to project, being a dick to everybody while Trump goes into intense negotiations with Iran, Israel, the Russians, and the Chinese, and everybody else. So we have a bunch of foreign policy hawks going out there, mostly pro-Israel, but that's actually secondary on this. But look at the undercurrent of the rest of the cabinet, including Marco Rubio at Secretary of State, which is that Rubio is a clear signal that we're going to be shifting our foreign policy from Asia to Latin America. Okay, that's one. Two, the rest of the cabinet is designed from the ground up to ignore Congress and deal with what's available to them under the executive branch that is already there, that they have power to do. They have power to implement. I mean, Obama legislated via executive order famously.
Mm-hmm.
Executive orders can be rescinded. Executive orders can be reviewed. Okay. And the money that's been allocated them can be frozen. All of these people that are running around virtue signaling how they're going to all quit their jobs because they don't want to be fired, by the way.
Yeah.
Because they get fired, they lose their pension. But if they quit, they get take their pension. Great.
Uh-huh.
I've seen this. We've seen this in every time a reformer comes in. There's always going to be a whole bunch of people. You see this at companies all the time. Like the lifers who are in there still like collecting. They're still going to work every day because they're making money. They're making an exorbitant amount of money going to work. And well, hell, why would I go home? I don't like my wife, and I barely know my kids. I might as well just keep going to work every day. You know what I mean? Or whatever. Like, so I'll just keep going to work and sloughing off the thing, and then and living off the shell. And then the minute the reformer comes in and says, yeah, well, we're going to start cutting departments. Guess what? All those guys, like, they're putting in their retirement notices, and then they're not paying benefits for them anymore. They're just paying the pension, which is already on the balance sheet. And you're cutting both the salary and the benefit and the regular bennies. And he's, and it's done. Like, that money's already been allocated. Okay. The projections on our budget deficits, on the projections on our future liabilities are all based on these guys are going to stay in service until they die, or until they decide to leave, then they're going to get their pensions. Well, if you can cut them off, you can cut 10% of the government workforce off 5 years early, where you're not paying salaries and bennies, and performance review bonuses of anywhere from 20 to 30% just for getting an automatic 5 across the board, which is what they do. Then, oh my, how many billions of dollars can you save across the federal budget? And that's just the labor costs of the guys who should have already, the people who should have already retired. Forget the grants and the NGO funding and all the rest of it. There's so much waste.
Yeah.
So much waste. We could probably run the government that exists right now on 1/3 the money.
Oh yeah, I bet.
And I mean that sincerely. And I'm not just talking about entitlement packages and whatnot. Entitlement spending is what it is, and there are ways to deal with that as well. There are plenty of ways to work with that. And what Jerome Powell has been very clear about is, you get your fiscal house in order, and I'll give you the policy room you need on the debt front, and I'll cut interest rates if you get your shit together.
Okay.
And a lot of people are, and I love my libertarian brother, and they're like, oh my God, he's threatening the federal government. Who does the Fed chair think he is to threaten the federal government? Like, he's the guy who literally is the controller of the currency.
Yeah.
And it's his job to protect the banking system. I'm okay with that. Like, okay, he's the Fed chair and he's already a compromised figure, but come on, let's not kid ourselves. Powell's like, this is reality. The bills are due. You want to spend $2 trillion a year more than you bring in? Fine. You're going to do it at 5.5%. Tell me how long that lasts.
I see. Yeah.
That's what I would do. If I were Fed chair, literally, if I were Fed chair, I'd be out there screaming every other day. Every time I got to the microphone, well, I may just have to raise interest rates if you guys don't cut spending.
Yeah, and he's literally said that, right? We got to cut spending.
He literally just said that.
Yeah.
And then, as opposed to jumping for joy, my libertarian brethren were all like, Why? Because they didn't say it. That's why. Because their whole friggin' mantra is that everybody's incompetent and they're the only smart people in the room. Got news for you. There are a lot of smart people out there, folks. And some of them aren't libertarians. They're not in the club. Sorry. Get over it. Like it's to watch this. When you finally get the moment, like you've been waiting for your entire friggin' life, and they're all like, "Oh my God, I don't want to win. If I win, then I won't be able to clickbait people anymore." Like, yeah, your grift will be over.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that across the entire space. The entire commentariat. I'm not naming names. You know who they are.
Let me ask you then about the Powell and the Federal Reserve in a little bit, because there's a couple of those stories and I'm sure I'm missing stuff, but what did you make or unpack what it meant when I think it was somebody asked Powell, if Trump were to fire you, would you leave basically? And he said, no. What does that all mean? And then I have a second one too.
Well, that one, I wrote about this. I made it abundantly clear what I thought about it. What I thought about it was, oh, that's cute, MI6. That's cute, Britain. That's cute, Davos. You're gonna send your little minion from Politico.
Okay.
Junior staffer from Politico goes into the FOMC meeting and asks Powell whether he would step down if Trump asked him to. No. I'm doing my job. I do my job well. But no. The law is the law. So who's going to argue that I haven't done my job well? Only the people who are going broke. He's done more to like screw the commercial real estate vulture capitalists who they can't get him on the phone for the last 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. He's done more to hurt those people than anybody else. And he's done irreparable damage to the fabric of the global Eurodollar system. Mm. And that means that he's done in irreparable damage to the global dollar carry trade. That's a good thing. Mm. You want these wars to end. You want the pedophilia rings to end. You want the drug flows to end. You want the regime change wars to end. You want the color revolutions to end. You want to disempower the Rothschilds and whoever it is that you think runs the world. Got news for you. It all flows through the Federal Reserve being at the zero bound for 12 years under Obama. Mm. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's it. Powell's been trying to right the ship on the monetary side since 2017. He's got it mostly in place. So that was quite simply the biggest tell of who is actually afraid.
Yeah.
Period. That was the big tell, as far as I'm concerned. I'm like, oh, right. On FOMC day, right after the election, we're going to try and embarrass Jerome Powell. The same way, 8 months ago, they sent the Just Stop Oil kids and let them run around when he's speaking at the ECB, the European Central Bank, and they let the Just Stop Oil kids come in and disrupt his speech. And he's like, yeah, close the fucking door. Full well when he got done with that, he walked over to Christine Lagarde and went, all right, bitch, I'm sorry. That's the way this game is played. Yeah. And again, there's the world we want and there's the world we have. The world we have is a world ruled by mob bosses. They happen to wear silk suits and put on silk ties and all the rest of it. And Ukraine, what's going on in Ukraine right now, it's envelope day on The Sopranos. Mm. That's what's going on now. Big cash call, everybody trying to dump money in to, make sure that they're paid up in full with the people that they got into bed with, whoever they happen to be. Yeah. Mostly the old banks, right? And the BlackRocks and everything else. And this is them trying desperately to hold on to, and this actually circles back to what you were trying to get me to talk about earlier, Henry, which is the following. What's their next move? Well, their next move right now is to try and keep Ukraine running and try and foment a wider war in Israel/Gaza or Lebanon with Iran in order to leave Trump with a war that he can't get away from, one, and two, therefore allow them to keep dumping money in and then extend to pretend and hope to figure out some way of getting rid of him and to stop what's about to happen. And they figure they have 60 to 90 days to get that done. Mm. And so, but it's not going to work, or it may work in some ways, and it may work in other ways. And they're not done. They haven't been fully disempowered yet. That's going to take another few years, but this is as close as we've ever come to being able to ring fence these people off, isolate them, and kill them off. They have been raping and pillaging humanity for 500 plus years. Okay? And they feel entitled to run the world. And at this point, they're not entitled to run a gas station. And we're done with it. And again, we see them in a way that we've never seen them before. And we have communications platforms which allow us to wake more people up on a daily basis as to who's actually behind all of this. And I can tell you that most of the pushback that I get is all of the same variety. And as far as I'm concerned, they're all, I just keep looking in the camera and going, nice try, MI6. I'm not changing my stance whatsoever. Whatever psychological profile you've built on me, doesn't work, folks. Fuck you. We will take you out. So take me out before you take them out. I'm dead serious. Like, that's the way, and it doesn't matter. That's the way we have to think. Even if it's not true. Assume that at every turn. Assume that half of the people who are giving you shit on Twitter aren't real.
Yeah.
Because they probably aren't.
Yeah.
And you're arguing with bots. I don't even argue with them anymore.
That's probably smart.
So
so then for the next 60 days or 90 days, like you said, what do you think might happen? I mean, and one really simply is like just Trump's safety.
Yeah. Again, it depends on how many deals did he cut to stay alive? Okay. Again, Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's not think that Trump didn't cut deals. Let's not be under any illusions that Trump is going to do everything we want him to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
And if we ask for perfection, well, then we're going to be disappointed. Strauss and Howe called them people like him the gray champion, right? And gray is the important part of that phrase, because he's going to do good things, he's going to do bad things, he's going to push things in a particular way, and it's not all going to be good. Anybody wishing for Vladimir Putin to be the world's great champion, got news for you. Putin's going to do what's best for Russia. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good for everyone. He's going to make mistakes. He's got his imprint. He's got his biases. He's got his relationships. They are what they are. Okay? But at some point, you transcend some of that stuff, see the bigger picture for what it is, and then implement change. It's going to be up to us what those changes are going to ultimately be. Trump is the catalyst for the changes to start. What's going to come out the other side is up to us. And so now, along with everything else that we're talking about, how do we ensure that we have a say in the matter going forward? Well, obviously, we clear up we clear up the voting systems in the states that Kamala Harris won, because they're all the states where no voter ID was the law. Start there. Let's just shore up the elections, and let's name names as to the people who have been running an operation on us. Everybody who says that everybody who before the election who said, they're just going to steal it and nothing's going to change and blah, blah, blah. And even if Trump gets in, nothing is saying, okay, fine. You want to live in that world where you're so cynical, not skeptical, but cynical, that that's the way the world works. Have fun being wrong a lot of the time going forward, because you just got a big piece of prima facie evidence that you're wrong. And what will happen is you will watch these people gish gallop their way into ever more arcane versions of reality in order to try and keep their subscriber base and keep the relevance. And the people who go with them are doing so out of emotional coping, because they don't want to face the fact that they were wrong. We'll see it on both the left and the right. It'll be just as obvious for Whoopi Goldberg as it is for Bill Kristol. Okay? And there are plenty of people closer to our part of the world where that will also be true. And I'm trying to be nice here. But at the same time, Murray Rothbard famously never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. What's going to happen here will be good. If it wasn't good enough for you, keep fighting for it. If you're not willing to fight, then, I don't have any sympathy for you. I don't have any empathy. Like, who do you want to be? Because if you don't realize that there comes that moment where if you're not willing to fight for what you believe in, then do you really believe in it? Or are you just LARPing as a smart person when really what you are is, midwit? And by God, the libertarians don't want to hear that because they're the smartest people in the room. Just ask them.
Right. That's right. I wanted to ask you about, okay, so if the federal government does start drastically spending less, and then you've also got tariffs, and then you've potentially got less income tax, you've got a bunch of levers changing.
You've got lower income tax rates. That doesn't mean you're going to have lower income taxes.
Okay.
Like the whole point of this is you can lower income tax rates, and every time we lower income tax rates, tax receipts go up.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
Like this isn't tough. This is we know this. Everybody who says otherwise is just lying to you. Like this whole IMF balance the budget thing to save the fucking bondholders bullshit needs to go. Every time a country gets into fiscal trouble, what does the IMF tell them to do? Raise taxes and cut government spending. Put more people on the dole and raise taxes and put a bigger burden on the private economy. Every time. Why do they do that? Because they're worried that the bondholders will make it difficult for the government to borrow money. The government shouldn't be borrowing money in the fucking first place.
Yeah.
They should be generating revenue off of their services. Last I checked, you could call some of those payments tariffs. I mean, look, I hate to I understand what the net benefit, net cost of what tariffs will be. I'm not breaking with that. But the basic economic work's been done. Nobody argues with it. You raise tariffs. Eventually the domestic population is going to pay for them. That's true, unless you're using tariffs as a negotiating tool to get rid of existing tariffs. And then you get the tariffs down to a level where no one cares because everybody's making money. And then the government is starved of its excess income because the tariff is, oh my God, it's 3%. Okay, whatever, fine. Here, take your 3%. And when we get back to like bitching that the tariff's 3% as opposed to 2.5%, I'll take that world. Because right now, again, I'll be honest with you. I've been repeating this now for ad nauseum for the last 72 hours. Howard Lutnick, who was heading Trump's transition team, did the whole rounds on all of the Bubble Vision sites, all summer long, talking about tariffs. And he reminded everybody he didn't have to remind me. He even had to remind me because I forgot about this, that we rebuilt Europe and Japan by putting 100%, by sending our goods over there and then still putting 100% tariff on our own goods being exported into those countries back in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s to help them build their domestic economies so that, they weren't really competing with Ford and GM who could literally run rings around them forever. Those tariffs are still in place now, and to the detriment of both sides. We can't sell GMs and Fords into Europe, and Germany got fat and happy on being able to sell BMWs with a euro, first a pound, and then the euro at a rate that was probably 40% undervalued, and to sell us a BMW or a Volkswagen into our market tariff free at, frankly, at one point was worth the money. It isn't anymore. Okay? Because when you have that kind of protection on an industry, it ultimately leads to the destruction of the dynamism of that industry. We saw this here in the United States in the steel industry by protecting it with tariffs for years. And then we wound up with consolidation and nothing was left. And now we're down to U.S. Steel. And now the U.S. Steel's, and the Japanese are trying to buy U.S. Steel. And we keep having to block people from buying U.S. Steel. Why? Because U.S. Steel is a crappy company. And we don't have any steel manufacturers in this country because we destroyed them all. All right. Because of tariffs. Well, there's meant to really be at a certain level a temporary tool to force a negotiated settlement. And, invariably what happens after that is somebody starts trying to use them and then enforce them through a military blockade. I just described the Civil War, by the way. Okay? So creating contracts of adhesion between suppliers and all of this stuff in order to get around it. And the reality is that our allies over in Europe fucking hate us. Okay? And our intelligent and our intelligentsia class here in the United States simp for people who hate us.
Yeah.
I'm done with that. I'm all for Trump putting 100% tariff on every fucking German car. Until Germany leaves the euro, properly prices the Deutschmark, lets Italy out of the debt trap that is the euro, and kills off the EU SSR, fuck Germany. And fuck German automakers. And fuck Obama for destroying our car industry with CAFE and RINs and the EPA and the clean air rules and all this bullshit. Get rid of it all. It's all illegal. Like Vivek said yesterday in a tweet that he put out, we're done. We have to repeat. We have to get rid of all 18,000 cases that were adjudicated via Chevron. All of those rules have to be removed because they are unconstitutional. They don't have to be challenged in court and then overturned one by one. They need to be removed because it was a mandate from the SCOTUS to do so.
Yeah.
So day one, Trump will do what he did in 2017 and suspend CAFE rules. You can see it coming from all the car makers because they've all gone back on their they've all reneged on their investments into EVs. Every one of them. Ford, GM, Toyota was the first one. Toyota getting creamed 3 years ago by the Sierra Club and all those people. Why? Because they didn't put out an all-electric Prius with the 6th generation Prius. No.
Yeah.
Toyota went, hybrids are the future. Get over yourselves. And then they put out a Prius that even I would buy because the new Prius is a friggin' badass car as opposed to the dumpy terrible thing that they put out for years to appeal to the worst kind of the worst kind of people, the very people I've been describing. So this is a watershed moment. Make automobiles affordable again. Make travel great again. I don't care. All of it. And it'll be good for the German auto workers. It'll be good for the Japanese auto workers. It'll be good for us. Be good for ours. It'll be good for everybody. Get rid of all the tariffs and get them down to 10% or what across the board or whatever, so that the government can build roads and shit. Okay, prices of cars would drop by freaking 30%. Get rid of the zero-bound interest rates. Get rid of all the safety regulations. Get rid of all the computers and this and all the. The cars are as expensive as they are, Henry, because in order to hit the CAFE regulation rules, we had to. The engineers had to literally try to break the second law of thermodynamics, and they nearly succeeded. When you look at some of these friggin' cars and how they operate, but then you look at the complexity of the cars.
Yeah.
Now we've got pickup trucks running. We got full-size pickup trucks running around with twin turbo engines that are blowing out at 40,000 miles because the engines haven't been tested. And these are supposed to be the backbone and the backbone of the American economy is the friggin' pickup truck. Without it, we don't operate because America's big. Europe, by the way, last I checked. You people all live within 40 friggin' minutes of each other. I got to drive 40 minutes to get a friggin' board game together. Get board game night together, for Christ's sake. Ridiculous. People have no idea how big America is. We can fit Europe into half of it.
Yeah.
Retarded. This is what's necessary. So we're never giving up our cars, guys. Sorry. Not happening. Like it's foundational, because if you don't unfuck the transportation industry, you don't unfuck the global economy.
Yeah.
And then you can't cut the budget, and then you can't do this, and you can't do that, and then Luke Roman gets to be right, and Luke Roman should be wrong. I like Luke, I really do.
Yeah.
He's a
No, I
good
figured.
man. He's a good
Yeah.
man, but he should be wrong on this. We should all want Luke to be wrong.
Yeah. Right. That's a good way to put it.
I mean, not because we don't like Luke, but because the future that Luke is describing is one none of us want to live in.
That's very true. Yeah.
Because Luke's a guy, you know what I mean? Like this, and Luke would want me to be right.
Right. Right.
If we were all rational and we weren't all, trying to just sell newsletters. I'm not here trying to sell a freaking newsletter. I make enough money. I don't give a fuck. I'm at that point now. I don't care. Like, I don't care. I'm not out here shilling. Like, I'm not. I could care less. You don't like my work? Piss off.
No,
We're good.
that's coming through, Tom. Don't worry.
I'm at the end of a really, really long week, man. I don't know if this is the commentary you wanted to have.
This is awesome.
But,
I'm more fired up than before. This is great. Let me ask you one.
Do it. That's what we're supposed to do now, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah,
great.
I love it.
Good way to end the week.
I have to ask you one more question. You can do a bullet answer on a quick one. I just want to see what you think about Bitcoin. Yeah, I know, right? Like, what's going on with Bitcoin right now? I'm a Bitcoiner, so I'm excited because Trump's got a ton of Bitcoiners. There's talk of this U.S. strategic reserve, which I don't know yet. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening. What do you think's happening with Bitcoin? What do you think might happen with Bitcoin in the next 4 years?
Bitcoin's gonna be fine. Bitcoin's gonna be great. Bitcoin is becoming a really important source of demand for the U.S. Treasury market at a time when demand for U.S. Treasuries is going to be a really big and important thing. Like Tether is a $126 billion company now.
Yeah.
They own, they hold, 80 to 85% of their assets in short-term U.S. T-bills. It's really important. It's they're collateralizing the SOFR market. Let's not kid ourselves. And I think that may be what somebody finally explained to Trump about, why Bitcoin is important, is it is going to become an important strategic asset going forward alongside gold in order to recapitalize the country. And in many ways, there's a lot of ways to recapitalize the United States. And I've talked about it many times. So if you're going to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve, or more appropriately, you're going to allow Bitcoin mining, and all you got to do is get rid of capital gains on Bitcoin. And I think that's on the table.
You do?
Oh, I do. Absolutely.
I've heard talk. I don't believe it yet, but
I don't think there's an option.
What?
Okay.
Why
I don't
is
think
that?
there's an option. I don't think we need capital gains on Bitcoin. I don't think we need capital gains on gold. I don't think we need capital gains on friggin' real estate. Well, maybe on real estate, but I'm open to these things. But the foundational bearer assets like that are used to collateralize our financial markets, why should we be restricting their flow internally? I'm not talking about if we need to put capital control, soft capital controls on gold, physical gold flow, go right ahead. But why do that? Why criminalize that kind of activity? Why criminalize people? All you're doing is you're forcing people to hold on to Bitcoin, is to buy it.
Yeah.
Stick it on a Trezor, and it doesn't move. And then you restrict the supply even more. We have no price discovery, and then we get what we've seen in the last 2 weeks. It goes from 70,000 to 91, and then it jerks up in a spasm, right? Like, why don't we just allow for price discovery? Why don't we do away with all that? Like, this is all vestiges of a hostile U.S. government, and by extension, European government to Bitcoin, because they don't want a competing asset to compete with their plans for digital currency. I'm telling you, Powell is at the Fed could care less about Bitcoin. There are other people at the Fed who are hostile to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I had a long talk with Caitlin Long the other night about this. I was on my podcast, and Caitlin and I, we're calling we have détente on this, right? Like, she's not convinced of my argument. I'm not convinced of hers. I feel sorry for her, what's happened with Custodia Bank, of course. I want to see, proper free banking in America, yada, yada, yada. I want to see the Federal Reserve eventually go away, Or at the very least,
Yeah.
I want to see it reformed back to its original mandate, where it's not really regulating banks the way it does today. I want it, if it's going to exist as a lender of last resort, then let it exist as a lender of last resort. If that's what the banks think they need, fine. Go back to that original conception. But we have to, but in order to maintain that, we have to beat the communists, and they are real, and they are everywhere. Okay, and we have to come to the rapid conclusion at a critical mass level that we've been dealing our entire lives post World War II with a bunch of fucking Trotskyites who have been literally trying to continue the communist revolution. First, they were anti-Stalin while the Soviet Union was around, and now they're anti-capitalist. And they go back and forth between each party, no matter where. And so all the neocons and all of the Trotskyites surrounding like Jennifer Rubin and Bill Kristol and all those, they're all Dick Cheney and all those fucking assholes. John Brennan already went over to the Obama administration from the beginning. These people are all friggin' Trotskyites, and they all have a plan. Their plan is to destroy Russia, destroy us, destroy capitalism, and destroy the private formation of capital. They are still on plan, and they will ally themselves like fucking cockroaches with whoever's in power. Mm-hmm. The people who are taking power now in the United States see them for what they are. And the Democrats are going to welcome them? Really? Good luck with that, because that's a suicide mission. Because that's what's got to end. When that ends, then we can have an honest-to-God discussion. I mean, like people have been asking us, so, okay, if you don't want to get rid of the Fed now, when do you want to get rid of the Fed? Like, here's my answer. When we've gotten rid of the frigging communists. When we've depowered these people, the people who created this friggin' cancerous ideology, destroyed it, and to try to destroy the world with it so that they could make the world safe for themselves to hyper-financialize and steal your friggin' wealth and steal your life from you. Because it's all bullshit. Communism's bullshit. It's just another gaslighting routine in order for the real oligarchy to continue to sell us our lives back to ourselves at pennies on the dollar. That's the story.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and once you realize that that's what the fucking fight is, the Fed is irrelevant. They're just an asset.
Gotcha.
They're just an asset in the war that I want to fight, because that's how you actually win, as opposed to just winding up meet the new boss, same as the old boss. I don't want the new boss to look anything like the old boss. I want this next generation to understand exactly the ones that voted with us this time are getting it. They understand that the whole friggin' system is corrupt to the gills and doesn't serve anyone. And it's not about the evil robber barons. Well, they don't like the robber barons either, but they don't like the robber barons, and they don't like they don't like anybody, these kids. They think it's all bullshit. Yeah. And that's good. But we have to take that skepticism they have, and we have to cultivate it into something good, nurturing, constructive, and hard. That doesn't turn from skepticism into cynicism. That's where their Gen X grandparents come in. And we say, look,
that's right.
We're assholes. We're meme lords. We're all of these things. But we are this way because we care. If we didn't fucking care, we'd still be watching Pornhub. We're not doing it. We wouldn't have gone out. We're not doing it. We're out here literally trying. You gave us the opportunity. We bided our time. We watched Repo Man 100 times. We watched They Live 1,000 times. We hum this tune. We hum the soundtrack to Escape from New York, the theme song from Escape from New York in our heads. We go to sleep with it. Right. That's who we are at our hearts. But it was never, ever because we were dropping out, folks. It's because we want all of them to drop dead.
Love it.
Never forget it.
I love it. We can wrap up right there. That is the best. Wish I didn't clear my throat. That was sweet. All right, Tom. Well, just so everyone knows, we're recording this on a Friday, so I'm going to say have a great weekend, but it'll probably come out early next week sometime.
That's fine. That's fine. After it's been a long week, and it's been a fun week, and thank you, Henry, for giving me the opportunity to kind of get all that out now.
That was great
Before this weekend. So But yeah, there's so much to do.
That was good.
The war's just started. Like, this is like the Last Jedi. The war has just begun. Like, and we're not going to be the Last Jedi. We're going to go out there and we're going to fucking let's go. Literally now, let's really take down Palpatine. But we got a lot of work to do, and and we have to have fun doing it, because if we don't have fun doing it, it's going to eat our souls away. So sharpen those meme lord skills, folks. And watch those valuables. It's going to be a bumpy, hilarious ride.
I got to tell you, this can be a tough turnaround for me. I'm going with my kids to a Frozen play after this.
Oh, I'm gonna be that's going to be hard. That's going to be
screaming
really hard.
about the communists, and everyone's just going to be trying to watch a Disney play. So,
well, and Frozen in particular, right? Frozen is a particularly egregious usurpation of the or inversion of the archetypal female story, and it's a terrible thing. And so just
they're all pretty bad.
When they get done with it tomorrow, just sit them down. If the kids aren't too young, make them watch V for Vendetta.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, Tom.
Or
thanks a lot.
Actually, even better. If you don't want to give them anything that violent, make them watch Miracle.
Yep, it's a good one too.
Like, that movie has been in my head now for about 2.5 weeks, because we're literally watching the same meltdown by Davos and company that we saw at the end of the Russian-U.S. 1980 Lake Placid game, where
there we go.
Tikhonov didn't know what to do in the last minute. He didn't know to pull his goaltender because he was never in that position.
Yeah.
And it was only at that moment that Herb Brooks and played by Kurt Russell believed it was possible they could win the game.
Right.
So go watch that. Go watch that freaking movie. That's a Disney, and that's owned by Disney now. Like, great movie, and that'll get you. If that doesn't get you going and ready for Trump, the season 2 of the Trump Show, I don't know what is. You got hockey, you got Kurt Russell, and you got the 1980 Lake Placid game. I'm like, I don't even need a Death Star. Like, I'm good.
All right, Tom. Have a good one.
Take care, man. Have a great weekend.